Little did I know, the popular pastor John Piper has a son named Abraham who currently has around 750,000 followers on the social media platform TikTok. But it's not for preaching the Bible. Instead, he's actually preaching against the Bible.
You want to know one of the silliest things about being raised devoutly evangelical? Children are expected to read the Bible. You might think of the Bible as "For God so loved the world," or that one emotionally lucid moment Paul had when he wrote about love and now everyone reads it at their weddings. But those are the boring parts. To a kid anyways. While other kids are learning to read with comics or whatever normal parents have around the house, here fundy kids are 6, 7, 8 years old, devouring stories of Jezebel being defenestrated and then eaten by dogs. If you're deconstructing, good for you. But if you just want to roll your eyes at how weird it all was, that's what I'm here for.
Now, definitionally speaking, he's an atheist, although he said that he doesn't like the baggage that comes with that title. But he punts out a lot of videos where he continually makes fun of and mocks the Bible and evangelicalism. He recently put out a video where he says how God claims that having kids is a bad idea. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the video, and then we'll wrap back around to talk about the bigger picture of all of this. Here's the video.
Did you know that the Bible says it's best to not have kids? There are Christian sects, from Catholic to Quiverful, that believe the opposite and pump out the product like they're on a mission from God, which they think they are. I once heard a pastor say the best way to get more souls into the kingdom of heaven isn't converting people, it's making them. But listen to this delightful piece of existential dread from Ecclesiastes. I declared that the dead who had already died are happier than the living who are still alive. Relatable. But better than both is the one who has never existed. That's the Bible that says that. Of the 3 states of being that are available to potential humans, God apparently thinks that their current state is the ideal one, non-existence. It's only going to take 2 holy seconds for someone to come along and say I'm taking this out of context, but you know what? It's pretty clear, assuming you're supposed to take the Bible literally. It's completely cool, obviously, to disagree with Ecclesiastes, just like you can disagree with the rest of the arbitrary writings that amalgamated into the Bible. But if you're gonna say that it's God's literal words, well, they just told you it's stupid to have babies.
All right, so let's go ahead and get this out of the way. So first off, the book of Ecclesiastes, the author, who likely is Solomon, talks about what life is like apart from enjoying life as a gift from God. He talks about how life apart from God boils down to a lot of things that are objectively meaningless, and it sounds somewhat depressing. But notice what Abraham Piper says when he reads verse 2 from chapter 4.
I declared that the dead who had already died are happier than the living who are still alive. Relatable.
He says it's relatable.
Relatable.
He also talks about this in a few other videos where he talks about how life is objectively meaningless since he doesn't believe in God.
If there is no meaning, why do you care that there is no meaning? Well, because as a human, I'm a sucker. We're all cursed to crave an ultimate purpose when there's none to be found.
And of course, he says this from the perspective of someone who's living life apart from God, so he's essentially confirming the truth of the passage. So although it seems that he intended this passage to have the effect of saying something like the Bible is ridiculous, in reality, he actually validates the truth of the Bible in doing so.
You didn't think of that? No.
By the way, this is actually somewhat a theme in a lot of his videos. He appeals to stories in the Bible that might sound strange to us today, and then seems to imply that that means that the Bible's either false or ridiculous.
5 absolutely insane Bible stories.
Welcome to another episode of Bonkers Bible Stories.
There's another episode of Bonkers Bible Stories coming out today or tomorrow.
But the Bible wasn't written with the intent to just make us feel good and nice fuzzy feelings whenever we read any of the stories in the Bible. Instead, the Bible's a book about reality that isn't afraid to be authentic enough to tell you the truth, no matter how strange or messy that it might seem. Of course, there's stories that all of us read in the Bible that might sound weird or strange to us, but just because they might sound strange or weird, it doesn't mean that therefore the Bible is false and these things aren't true. But secondly, I want you to notice how Piper claims that God says that it's better for us not to have kids.
Of the 3 states of being that are available to potential humans, God apparently thinks that their current state is the ideal one, non-existence.
But like all human language, context still matters, and a minimal amount of context here shows us that this isn't telling us that God thinks that non-existence is better than existence. Instead, it's an observation from Solomon, who's telling us about what life is like apart from enjoying the gift of life from God. The context here is talking about how there's no objective meaning apart from God, which Abraham Piper agrees with. Now, of course, given the obvious nature of the context here, he anticipates this objection, and his response to it is talking about people who say that the Bible is meant to be taken literally.
You know what? It's pretty clear, assuming you're supposed to take the Bible literally. If you're gonna say that it's God's literal words, well, they just told you it's stupid to have babies.
The only problem is he misunderstands what people mean when they say that they take the Bible literally. Now, no one, and no pun intended, literally no one believes that the Bible should be taken literally in the way that Abraham here means it. There's a reason why no one who reads the story about Joshua fighting the Battle of Jericho thinks that that means that we should all literally go out to Jericho to go fight. When people say they take the Bible literally, they're usually just responding to people who say that the Bible is just fiction and none of the stories in the Bible actually happen. But of course, this doesn't mean that taking the whole Bible literally means that you have to take everything as prescriptive rather than things being taken also as descriptive. But let's talk about the bigger picture here, the more important part. So most of Piper's arguments are like what we just saw in that other video. Most of them aren't logically persuasive or anything like that, but they are emotionally persuasive. And this is why he has such a large following. The reason why his videos might be persuasive to people is because they're relatable. And I think at some level, all of us can relate to the pressure that he felt from religion. Now, gauging off of the comments on his TikTok page, it's obvious that Piper's audience is made up of people who share his same negative feelings of what it was like growing up in an evangelical household. Now, for me personally, I didn't grow up in a church-going home, and I don't think I even saw a Bible until I was almost 16 years old. So although I didn't have the same experiences with Christians in the same way that he did, I, like everyone else, have met some pretty unpleasant Christians in my time. Christians who use the Bible as a way to bully people or to look down on people or as a way to feel superior to others. So I don't know what Piper's life was like growing up, but if we assume that he grew up in an environment where people divided the world up into two categories, where the bad people all go to hell and the good people all go to heaven, then his reaction makes sense to me. It doesn't mean that he's right, but at least it makes sense. If our view of God is like every other religion in the world, where you have to be good in order to have everlasting life, then that's bad news for every single one of us, because Jesus said that no one is good but God. And over in the Bible, we continually read stories about how people have this inability to live up to the standards of the law or to the standards of God's perfection, and even our inability to live up to our own standards. So if we have a view about how it's only the good people who go to heaven and it's the bad people who go to hell, then if we're even a little bit self-reflective, we'll realize that none of us deserve to be in the good guy category, because God requires perfection and none of us are perfect. Once I realized that biblically speaking, the world isn't divided up into just good guys and bad guys, but instead it's divided up into perfect people and sinners. Knowing this, I realized that I couldn't possibly understand the gospel and feel superior to people at the same time simply because I was saved. If I'm not saved because I'm exceptionally moral or spiritual or whatever, the only reason that I'm saved is because I received a free gift from God of his grace. How could I possibly brag or feel better than anyone else because I just received something? The reason why I'm saved is not because of the life that I lived that saved me, but instead it was the moral life that Christ lived that saved me. If someone needs to be perfect in order to get into heaven, that means me, you, Abraham Piper, Abraham of the Bible, and everyone else, we're all in the same category, with the exception of Jesus. Since Jesus was the only one who's perfect, we need his free gift of righteousness in our place in order to make the cut. And knowing this should take away any self-righteousness that we might feel when we talk about Christianity with other people. Now, Piper's objections remind me of a popular meme that implies that Mary was a Me Too victim. And on the surface, this meme might sound convincing, but what happens when you look at it more closely? Go ahead and click on this video to see. But the next time that you hear someone saying,
Pretty clear, assuming you're supposed to take the Bible literally.
what are you gonna say?